Hello everyone, and welcome back to the February weekly Astro Update. And this week we're going to be straddling February and March. So welcome back to Mandi Ray of Ecstatic Astrology. Thank you for recording 5 weeks with me.
Oh yeah, might as well. Just dive in.
Covering this overlap that we've got between the 26th of February to the 5th of March. We are both ladies of Asterosphere Kairos. This is our collective. Do check us out on social media and other places, really. You can find us Asterosphere Kairos, and our details will be in the show notes. So this is the end of the month, just to get it in context with everything else that's happened through this month. We've just been talking about Pisces, really. It feels like all through the month. So we've really only got the 28th left in February, the new moon in Pisces, to look at. So I'll take you to the week of the 26th to the 5th of March, because we go from Wednesday to Wednesday, which is just to honour our good friend Hermes, who's the ruler of astrology, which is why I do it. And also because it creates an overlap with a lot of astrologers do weekend to weekend forecasts. So this just creates a little bit of an overlap. If you're following one, then you've got some more dates and it sees you over the weekend nicely. So at the 28th, we've got the new moon in Pisces. And of course, this is at this beautiful 09 that we're in this season of the nines, and this one's going to be significant because the North Node is, of course, in Pisces, so we're getting closer, and all of these planets in Pisces as well. So yeah, it's a big new moon for a lot of people. And then on the 2nd, we've got a couple of things happening. Venus begins her retrograde from Aries. We just had the Venus ingress into Aries, and she doesn't get far. She gets to 10 degrees, so she just reaches that second decan and then begins to retrograde. But at the same time, we've got Mercury meeting Neptune. So having had that meeting that we talked about with Saturn last week, it's now taking that information into Neptune and getting more information from the collective. And then we've got Mercury entering Aries, so joining Venus there, just as Venus is turning retrograde to come back and meet. So these two planets, who I always visualize them as like two really excited dogs, and you've got a dog walker. So if you think of the sun as the dog waterer, and the dog, or like Mercury and Venus, and they're running ahead, they're finding sticks, they're finding all sorts of things and bringing it back to the sun, and then running behind because they found something interesting and they don't want to catch up. And then the owner's, come on, we've got to go. Let's keep it moving. So they're running backwards and forwards. So we find that with the Venus and the Mercury retrogrades and the Cazimis that happen a lot more frequently. But we're very used to this energy.
Yeah.
So what do you think of this week, Mandi?
I think this is the moment we start sliding into eclipse season. So I think it's pretty big as far as being able to feel into it, because these are, especially with Mercury and Venus, you have personal planet stuff going on. So it's much more palpable, I think, in reality. So that's why I think this week, even though we have Venus going retrograde, which typically can be pause or slow down, I don't think it will be slow at all. I think the nature of Aries means it still will be pretty active, especially with Mars freshly direct.
Yeah, Venus doesn't retrograde as often. Like Mercury will retrograde 3 times a year, but Venus, her last one was in Leo in 2023. So it's a bit more rare that she has a retrograde, and the same with Mars, that it tends to be every 2 years. So there's a bit more space, but also it makes it a lot more significant when she does retrograde. Okay, so on the 28th of February, we have this lovely new moon at 9 degrees. So this is down here, and look how many planets. Now the moon has joined the party. It's like, it's really all going on. So Pisces, or if you've got any mutable placements, like, yeah, let us know what's going on for you. Pisces, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius. It's like, it's going on.
Yes.
It's like all of these planets, you've only got Venus outside, Jupiter and Mars, but so many planets here. And this is the first decan here, this hidden path. So it's like, okay, what are we finding here? This little fella just tracking through the snow and finding something new. And these keywords, invisible structures, wandering, and hidden motivations as well. So it just feels like a new moon is like a seeding moment. The analogy of the gardening analogy of like something new being planted and grown. And this being a hidden path path, it's like, okay, it really rhymes with that once the seed's planted, it's under the earth, it can't be seen. It has to grow up towards the surface and towards the sun. But how does it know which way to grow? If it went downwards, it just wouldn't survive and make it. And you don't always know which seeds will. So you just got that energy of, find that path, but get it the right one.
Yeah. The Sabian symbol even speaks to that. It's an aviator pursues his journey flying through ground obscuring clouds. So it just evokes the achievement of mastery without maybe transcending the natural limitations of things, but so kind of allowing you to operate in this spiritual realm. And it makes a lot of sense for mastery to be or even the hidden structures part, the key words here, because eventually there will be involvement with Saturn, and Saturn is there, and Saturn is speaking so much to Saturn being in the sign. I feel like finding the hidden path, that to me is a great way to describe Saturn and Pisces. Invisible structures, all of that just makes so much sense, and I think that's what it speaks to.
Yeah, I mean, even just the environment that this cute little water bowl is in is like snow and cold, and it's just a Saturnian environment, isn't it, this winter?
Yeah,
like the coldest time of year. And like the snow, you get the tracks, don't you? That the pathway through the snow would be compacted, but no, you're going through this fresh snow and finding this new way and using your other senses, which is very much what we've been speaking to with Neptune and the North Node still co-present, and also Saturn and Mercury doing their thing. And when we've got all these planets, this all blends like a soup. Like you're kind of throwing everything into the pot and seeing what it creates. So this blend of all these planetary energies coming out when they're all in the same sign together, even though they're not making an exact aspect together, there is this blending of all their significations.
Yeah, and the square to Jupiter, I think speaks to the planting a seed, and Jupiter being a benefic and Mercury being in Pisces, ruling Jupiter, it does seem like we're planting a seed for good. I don't feel like this particular moon phase is going to be, hard or anything like that. I think the square to Jupiter is like, okay, it's time to find the hidden path. Even it speaks to the Jupiter involvement here.
Yeah, and then you've got Mars as well, still at 17 degrees, which it's been at for quite some time in the trine. I mean, it's not making an exact aspect, but it is applying to Saturn now that it's direct. So it's wanting to bring it into form, but it's like the fire in the water, and then this cold. Saturn is cold in the water, so it's like the fire and ice. And
yes,
it's really quite nice. We've got this little water vole, and he's journeyed deep into mysterious territory in search of the truth. So it's like that questing nature of Jupiter, really. Jupiter wants the truth. That's its nature. And after much wandering, he reaches this invisible wall and is asking who put that there, but then realizes it's his own mind. Like many moons ago, brick by brick, he begins to take it down. And as he does so, he begins to understand why and how it was constructed. So again, we're going back to this Saturn and Mercury feeling of this was constructed over time, but it's that insight into your own mind as well. And this quest, this Jupiterian quest of his, reminds us of those subtle structures that aren't always obvious to us, but they shape our individual realities. Two people can experience the same events and their perceptions can be totally different of them. And a lot of that is our perceptions in our own minds and the stories that we've had from the past, the ones that we cling to or the ones that we've released, and how we perceive those events. And sometimes we need to stop and just restructure them. The old ones that we've outgrown need to be released. Some of those stories that we've held on to, they may have helped us once, but they're not helping us any longer. So it's about finding those invisible walls, because they might be holding us in when now we need to move on, carry on down that path. And now's the time we need to use all this beautiful Piscean energy. It's going to help us really find these invisible walls that we've built for ourselves, are holding us back in some way, and give us that energy to just knock it down and power on through it. There's a mindfulness story about a boulder as well, and you walk up to the boulder and do you stop and have a picnic because there's a boulder in your way, or do you walk around it, and it's just that being able to say, okay, I could walk around this. But some people don't always realize that that's a possibility. They don't consider that path. They know that, okay, I can't go directly the way I wanted to. And it was that thing you were talking about earlier, like the snake that bites you. And are you going to chase the snake to find out why and debate with it over whether that was fair and whether you deserved it?
Yeah, exactly.
Or are you going to
You're going to start helping yourself.
And it's that same kind of thing. And again, that's those stories in your mind. If you think you didn't deserve it and you're focused on that, then that's going to hold you back from actually dealing with the problem and in mindfulness, we talk about two arrows. There's the actual event, which is the first arrow, the thing that happens to you that's unavoidable. And then the second arrow is those stories in our minds that create pain around that event. We're telling ourselves maybe it wasn't fair or you didn't deserve it. So therefore we chase the snake. Well, who is this snake? Why did it pick me? Why did this happen? If only I'd gone this other way, it wouldn't have happened. And all these different things that we build around that event, and they're the second arrow, and they wound us again. We don't realize we can snap that arrow. We don't have to carry that burden, and we can just focus on the first arrow of the event and do something about that. And we don't realize that the second arrow is holding us back from doing that. We get so lost in those stories of why and how, and did I deserve it, and if I'd done this, and I wish I'd done that. And that so distracts us from the path of actually, okay, what am I going to do about this snake bite? Because I really need to get help quite quick. While you're lost in these stories, you're not going to actually take action what you need to. And there's nothing you can do about that pain, because pain, like Buddha said, pain is inevitable. Suffering is inevitable. Sorry, pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional. So we choose that suffering in the stories that we tell ourselves, and particularly the ones that we hold on to when we've outgrown them. Like they serve us for a short time, but sometimes we outgrow them, and this is really calling in. This is time to knock some of those old stories down and bring some new, dreamy, Piscean, Jupiterian stories in. You've got all that information coming in. Everything you've learned from Mars in Cancer is all informing this, and Jupiter now direct in Gemini in that mutual reception there. Just like informing that and supporting you to, okay, what are we going to do? And even the Uranus as well. That's still connected to Mercury. So those ideas and thoughts, this insight there available from Uranus. So yeah, just set that intention that that's what you're going to do. And this energy is like supporting you through it. Like if you want to do it, it's going to happen now. I love this series of nines that we're having, and 9 being like this number of the triad. I was reminded of this yesterday, and divisible by 3, and 3 being like so linked with the moon, and like those significations of the quarter moon, the full moon, and waxing and waning and the phases and everything. That 9 is really just drawing our attention.
I think it's the Pisces is dominating. I think we've said so much about it. So I love it. I love what you said. Venus turning retrograde. Yeah, we can go through those too. Yeah, it turns retrograde at 10 degrees, 50 minutes of Aries. Yeah, this is something that, Venus being opposite its home sign, not really super happy, decides it wants to go back to its exalted sign. So it's going to turn around and move back to Pisces. But this moment, I think we don't have very long between Mars stationing direct and Venus stationing retrograde. It's, the 20 through the 2nd. And so we have like a week, but Venus decides, because Mars was retrograde in Cancer and got all squishy, I guess I'm going to have to go to Aries where Mars's home is and do some reorganizing around there, So it is a reevaluation time. I think at first with it being Aries, it's more about our identity and how we move through the world and how we want to show that. Do we wear it on our sleeves? Is this a time when people go into hiding? I don't know. It definitely speaks to survival, I think Aries always does for me. And the moon being there is always just really hilarious. So the moon always visits when there's important things. But yeah, it's ruled by Mars. Mars is still very slow in Cancer. The moon and Mars are in mutual reception here, adding to, I think the point being cardinal signs have to be on task right now. I think that's really the theme here. So Cancer, Aries, Libra, Capricorns, it's your time to kind of reevaluate in order to be on task. And any time that you do this in any of the cardinal signs or with any cardinal sign placements, you have to remember that Jupiter will be moving into Cancer and Saturn will be moving into Aries. So this is going to be something that harkens, or maybe no harkens is past, but I guess foreshadows, I think, the last Jupiter-Saturn square. So, pay attention. Now is your time to reevaluate your Aries area and eventually your Pisces area before that happens. And I think it will be helpful if you intentionally do it rather than let the Jupiter-Saturn square drive you mad for the few weeks that it is happening in June, I think. So yeah, I think that is probably the most important stuff to say about that. And the Pisces stuff is still holding. Let's see, I'm just looking to see. I don't think there's any. The sextile to Jupiter is still kind of there with Venus, but it doesn't quite get there.
Reformation was we were taught for that. When it gets so close, it's an engagement, isn't it, between 10 and 12 degrees?
Yeah.
Degrees, Jupiter at 12. So they're within touching distance. I was explaining an aspect as like two people across a room and your eyes connect and one moves towards the other. And you're going to have a conversation. So you're both moving towards each other, but then somebody intervenes or something and it's not happening. So yeah, reformation, because obviously she stops and she turns back. She's changed her mind. She doesn't like him. She's got the ick. So,
or someone who gives her the ick interrupts.
Yeah. Something going on. I mean, she's stationing retrograde now, and then she won't go direct until the second week of April. And then it'll still be, well, we've got the honeycomb example in a minute of all the dates to watch out for. But Venus retrograde is kind of like these dark night of the heart kind of journeys. And I was listening to Austin Coppock talk about it. And he was saying about sometimes with the Venus retrograde, go on a Venus fast. Whatever house Aries is for you, if you know what houses it falls in your chart, it's kind of a time when we liked something and then now we don't, like that feeling of getting the ick. Maybe you loved, here in the UK, we eat chips with salt and vinegar. And I used to love it. And then suddenly I didn't. And I'm just getting back to liking vinegar on them again. But, that's kind of like a Venus retrograde thing. And so he says, maybe intentionally go on a fast. If there's something that it's starting to ping for you that you're not so keen on anymore, don't try and bulldoze through it by overdosing on that thing. I want to fast of it because that will really clarify if you really liked it or if you don't, and if your tastes have just changed, because it can be about taste changing. And that makes me think of that last Venus retrograde that was so significant in Leo, because that was like all the Hollywood breakups that we saw, and it was just like sometimes a couple a day and every other day because of being the sign of Leo. It was like the show business side, and we had that Barbie and Oppenheimer in the box office kind of competition, so that time it feels so vivid. But it was like people just getting the ick, they'd stayed in a relationship and then suddenly it was like, I really don't like this anymore, it doesn't suit me. It didn't necessarily have to be bad, breakups. It's just, no, this isn't working for me, I'm walking away.
Yeah, and you might look to the Mars and Cancer to inform what that is, for sure.
Yeah, what you've learned from the Mars and Cancer retrograde is now Venus is now taking like those banner races and what they call pass the baton, a relay. So like Mars has been carrying it, like figuring out that stuff in Cancer, and now it's passing the baton over to Venus in Mars's sign of like, okay, you've figured out, you've got clarity around that emotions and your vulnerability and everything, but now Venus is in Mars's sign in Aries, and you know where you're vulnerable, but what are you going to release? What are you going to let go to meet your emotional needs?
It's also related, and I'm sure we're going to get into the slides, and if you want to go there, you can. It's 40 days, which is linked to the story in the Bible. Jesus goes into the desert for 40 days and he is deprived of food and water. I look to religion or religions, I should say, not just one, but like all of those, they are generally related to astrology, if you can look at it that way. And that's exactly what the Venus retrograde is. You may be either deprived of something or you get the ick. You could be deprived and going, do I give in to something to get it back? Or again, the ick thing makes a lot of sense. It's also really related to the descent of Inanna, which is kind of what's depicted here. But starting in Aries, we reevaluate personal passions. You can tell Gemini is rising here. and desires, rethinking independence and relationships, because Venus is related to other people. Venus is also related to money and values. So we reevaluate our relationships, but because it's Aries, it is how we're independent in them. And it's like two trees growing next to each other, but they don't interfere with each other. And that's kind of the Venus retrograde in Aries situation. So I'm revisiting self-worth through action and courage, reassessing the role of confidence in love, reflecting on impulsive connections. And that is a big one, I think, especially with Venus retrograde in Aries. But as it moves into Pisces, it becomes reevaluating our romantic and spiritual ideals, these kind of dreamy behaviors. So when Venus meets the North Node and Neptune in February and then moves back, it may be, I had rose-colored glasses a little bit, revisiting dreams and fantasies, especially in love and with values. Reassessing emotional boundaries, that I think links to Mars also in Cancer, and reflecting on compassion, forgiveness. And the most important, I think, is releasing illusions for authentic connections. I think, especially with it being Pisces. Pisces rules both illusions and the authentic, intuitive connections in life. So you sometimes can do one or the other. And I think this will help us clarify what relationships are what for us. And I have down there, I name her Inanna, the first daughter of the moon. Oh, I love that. Yeah, just the morning and evening star, which is the Venus, the 8-pointed star symbol of Inanna, 8th planet from outer space. So, the Venus star points are when Venus and the sun come together, and it makes an 8-pointed star symbol, kind of mandala-like thing in the sky.
And it looks so beautiful because when you look at that pattern that they create, it's like a flower, isn't it? It's like so Venusian.
Yes, it looks just, like what you would think a Venus pattern would look like. That's exactly what it is. So the Venus retrograde cycle is a period when the planet Venus appears to move backwards. And that's important. It's an apparent motion, not really moving backwards, but it's from our perspective on Earth. About every 19 months, lasting for about 40 days. And that's what I was talking about, how I've always related it to the story of Jesus in the desert, because it very much, especially starting in Aries, gives desert vibes. Venus is a time of reflection, reevaluation, reassessment in areas of love, relationship, beauty, values, and finances. It can bring past issues to the surface, prompting people to reconsider their desires and what they truly value. The story of Inanna comes from the ancient Sumerians. It's also known as Ishtar in Babylonian mythology, and it is used as a mythological reference for understanding the Venus retrograde cycle. It represents the duality of love, beauty, desire, and power, and it is very much a journey of transformation. And the reason this is because Venus disappears from sight. So if you're an ancient person and you're looking at the sky and you see this very bright light, beautiful light, and it's, maybe in your mind bringing you all of these things, these good things, because it could be looked at as good luck for war in ancient times, and then it disappears. And that is kind of like this. We are deprived of the light. And then it reappears as either a morning or an evening star. And so the most famous myth is the descent to the underworld, where she seeks to confront her sister Ereshkigal, that's right, the goddess of the underworld. I tried so hard to learn that when I was giving my talk on this. The journey represents symbolic death and rebirth. That's the light disappearing. So it's when Inanna must let go of the external power and ego to undergo a transformative process. When she descends, she loses the divine powers, only to be resurrected when she returns to the upper world. It illustrates the themes of letting go, self-reflection, and emerging renewed, which I love that phrase. Similar to the introspective nature of Venus retrograde. Beautiful.
It is, isn't it? And it so reminds us that when we go through these challenging times, that there can be that silver lining, that when we emerge from the challenges, something's changed and shifted for us.
Mm-hmm.
In our world. We've got the dates here of the cycle. So we are here.
That's right.
No, we are here.
Here, stations retrograde, March 1st, March 2nd, depending on where you are in the world. And, there's the 40 days in pinky red right there. So the blue does kind of, I guess, lend itself to the Piscean nature of some of it, the watery nature, but the red is the fiery part of it. And it will reemerge as a morning star, which was, again, associated with the light bearer, which in the Bible was called Lucifer. That's really what Lucifer means, the morning star. And there was some contention that Venus as a morning star is, kind of the warrior goddess. And I kind of like that, it's because when you wake up, if you're waking up for battle and Venus is rising, that kind of makes sense. And the spoils of war is Venus as an evening star, which is what we have right now. And that's, if you're getting home from the battlefield with your new sword that you just took off of somebody, and that's the spoils of war, and you see Venus setting. So we're entering into this because this retrograde period is a moment where we're like, I need to be active, I think is eventually going to be what comes of it. And that's going to be when it stations direct, April 12th. It probably won't reemerge, though, for a few days, though, probably 10 or 12 days. I need to look at that.
The time, doesn't it, afterwards? Because the story as well, starting in January, when Venus went into Pisces and traveling this way up, and then afterwards, the retrograde, the shadow, and ending in June, when she goes into her home sign of Taurus.
Yeah, and is the star point on there? Probably not. Let me look at that. Star point is, getting it right now, March 22nd. So it's in Aries, and it's at 2 degrees of Aries. Something to note, because that's the moment when Venus, it doesn't reemerge yet. It still combusts, but it will reemerge quite soon after that. So it gets it'll get away from it by the time it stations direct, I think, because it'll be at 25 with the sun at 16. So I think you can see Venus rise by around April 5th. So it's low.
And I see Venus, like it's like a summer thing, isn't it? That we can see Venus, and when she gets close to the moon or close to other stars, like that reflective light, like Jupiter accompanies us through the winter, and Venus is there for us through the summer.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. And it may be actually the next week. I may be when it actually stations direct that you can see it, because it'll be a full 30 degrees. So you should be able to see it rise by the station direct on April 12th. Yay! Morning star Venus.
Yeah, we like that. So then we've got Neptune conjunct Mercury on the 2nd of March. And I often think of this as like the astrologer's aspect, because Mercury is the ruler of astrology, and then Neptune is that spiritual side of astrology. And sometimes we need to bring both, like Mercury, the book learning, the curiosity, the how do I learn all these symbols and put it all together. And then Neptune is like, actually, no, just look at this mandala of this beautiful chart, and what is your intuition telling you about it? And sometimes it is that thing of, once you start talking about it, ideas just flow, and that's why we love our astro conversations, because ideas bounce off each other. One of us says something and the other one gets like 3 ideas flooding. So it just feels like that Neptune Mercury meeting, like bringing gifts of intuition and insight, and flowing imagery and inspiration. And they bring out ability to perceive patterns and connections, which is all about what astrology is. It's like noticing these patterns that we spot. I mean, a chart is very meaningful to somebody who hasn't studied some astrology, but they can still sometimes see patterns, connections.
Right.
Or oppositions or something. You could maybe look at a chart and still see something, like still see that build up in Pisces, would still stick out. And it's searching for a higher meaning from that, like leaning into that mystical side. And I think of astrology as like a divine language. Well, as a divine language, that like for thousands of years, these ancients started just noticing the connection between events in the sky, the planetary aspects connecting, and then events on Earth happening, like an eclipse of the sun, and a leader dies or steps up or steps down in some way. And then just started to track, okay, what happens on Earth when this happens? What happens when the moon reaches here? And that's kind of how it's evolved, and that's what astrology is putting together this history, this really rich history that we've got of people who've studied these movements for so long, and taken their meaning, but also us carrying it on and adding our ideas and meaning. Once we've done that book learning, where are we going to take it? And it's kind of us bringing our own conversations and our own ideas into it as well. So that's kind of feel about it. But also we've got the North Node, that karmic, fated element,
Well, I mean, I think the fact that Neptune and the North Node have been kind of hanging out together and Mercury meeting Neptune there is kind of a moment when we are aware of it, because Mercury brings awareness to us. Now in Pisces, that awareness may be, like you think you hear someone say something, but I do think it's an extremely inspirational moment, a moment when you can reach to the muses and go, hey, I need you to give me an idea. And also we'll link into the eclipse time, because Mercury will go retrograde just like Venus in between the two eclipses. So just something to tune into. And it's a good day, I think, to try to draw on that imagination and that spiritual feeling that you can have.
It's interesting, actually. I've been developing a new reading that's part meditative and storytelling and imaginal, and I'm looking at this date very closely as a time possibly to bring it forward into the world. Also, this is like the new moon moment when they meet. It's like that conjunction of the sea beneath the earth, but it's definitely a time to start that process of, okay, I've been developing it maybe for a year, practically.
Yeah.
Okay, getting my ideas together and formulating how can it work as a reading, and maybe that's the time when this is going to shift. So that was the old Mercury Neptune cycle, and now it's like, okay, into the new cycle, but it seems to represent what that reading is as well.
And Jupiter's feeding off all of this, because Jupiter square the sun here, or the sun is square Jupiter, really is more appropriate way to say it. And Jupiter's answering to Mercury conjoined Neptune. So I think the propensity for everything to be extremely disconnected and spiritual and imaginative is there, because Jupiter is just feeding off of that. So I do like this date.
Bringing that information in, because that's what I want the reading to do, is to access information, but not from the normal places.
Right. There you go.
So that's like the Jupiter in Gemini with all that information, but where are you going to get it from? And getting it from that Piscean place just feels nice. And of course, Mars still at 17 degrees, as it has been, I think, for pretty much the whole of February. We're just now crossing into March, but making that watery trine still, and just falling in between the sun and Saturn, in that whole sign trine between them.
Yeah, soak up this moment, because the next few things are going to be Mercury moving into Aries, and then we're going to have some eclipses to deal with. So this is a moment to soak up, I think.
Yeah, I like that. That ease, that niceness, like the Mercury Venus conjunction was before, just like showing us the potential for the best, but also the shadow of the tendency for errors and misunderstandings. So watch out for that around this time, around the 2nd of March. Also the wishful thinking, like that's very much a Pisces thing. And with Mercury meeting Neptune as well, that's amplified.
Yep. And Mercury will be back.
Yes. Yeah. So if something does happen and go wrong, you've got a chance to correct it. So Mercury will travel forward into Aries and then return over these degrees. Yeah. If something like that comes up, you may be wanting to correct it. And it can be ignoring an unpleasant reality. Sometimes we can deceive ourselves that something's fine when it actually isn't. So again, we'll learn about that with the retrograde. Or perceiving ourselves as a victim. Again, when we're not, we can see that sometimes when something's not taking our own responsibility or accountability for our actions and blaming everybody else around us. So it's like that victim mentality, and you can spot that sometimes, and nothing's going to change until you start taking that accountability. And maybe this retrograde and these connections is a chance to work on that, if that kind of thing is resonating, or people have said that back to you before. So that can be a thing. The archetype I've got here is just that meditation and the mindfulness, but also sacred chants, like literally using Mercury to speak it out, like repeating the Om or something, and just like letting your voice echo around, finding the magic within that. Or equally profound silence, like be still and silent and find there. I recently did a course on gnosis, and one of the challenges was to just sit and not be anything, not to be meditating, which I found really hard, because it's like, okay, I've got a process here. This is what I do. And it was like, no, just sit. And it was to do it outdoors as well. So it's even harder, because you've got the noises coming in and your awareness of what's around you. And it was actually so much more challenging than you realize to do that.
I believe that.
But Neptune's at home there, Mercury's in exile, so you've got that tension there. But with the North Node, it's kind of pulling us into this wheel of fortune between the two, like this increase that the North Node brings that we've spoken about before this month with them. And I've also spotted a couple of Antishas forming and contra Antishas here. We've got, and you might need to check my work because I'm not always brilliant at these. Krista is our queen on these, but Saturn and Venus. So we've got Saturn at 20, Venus at 10. Going across this line, which I believe is a contra Antisha.
Yeah, the Antisha always throws me for a loop. She's the Antisha queen.
Yes. But I think like Pisces and Aries is the contra. So that's like a secret opposition. So like a tension, a shadowed tension between the two. So there's some connection there that we obviously can't see because one's at 20, one's at 10. It's not a usual aspect.
Yeah.
Burst to each other. So there's something that Venus is informing to Saturn and being fed back they're connecting with. But I've also got Mars and Jupiter. They're in Antisha, I believe. So again, in the way that's the cardinal to mutable, that's cardinal to mutable. So they're just a degree away. So I looked at when that goes exact, and it's not until the 9th of March, and it's for a really, really short time. So they're applying for a really long time. And then when I tried to animate the chart, it's less than an hour that they're actually exact. And it's like Jupiter really fast shifts to 13 degrees.
Oh, yeah.
So he reaches 13, but then he jumps to 14. And Mars moves to 18. So they like separate, they like spring apart.
Mm-hmm.
And the Antisha is like a secretive conjunction. So something that they're meeting and forming anew. But it's in the shadow, we won't know about it. But maybe like Mars going direct and the other conjunctions and the moon touching them, things might be revealed, but also watch out for things in the shadows, things that we can't see. Just feels significant on this date. And of course, that's so pertinent with Neptune. Like it's a planet of illusions and delusions and hidden things that we don't understand. So to have spotted two together, it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, they're kind of supporting that thing of like things going on that we can't quite put our fingers on.
Right.
Can't quite see. And then I've got the dates. They last met on the 8th of March, 2024, and that was at 27 degrees. So it's like the story's only just moved on that 1 degree.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're going to meet again the 29th of March at 29. I think it's so funny, the progression. It's 27, 28, 29. And then the next one is Aries, April 16th. And that's 0 Aries. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So it's like that story is really being developed painstakingly, isn't it? Degree by degree.
Yeah.
We're going to meet here and we're going to meet there. And we really need to get all these details right because Neptune, you're confusing me.
That's right.
So we need to come back to it. And, you know, we've had this meeting, but Mercury's not short. So he goes away, has a go at instigating it and doing what they've decided to do. And then he has to come back, make sure he's got his ideas straight.
That's right. Because the next one is the Aries thing. Mercury moving into Aries. And this just, excites everything because Mercury thinks, I guess, more quickly. It's more to the point whenever it moves into Aries. So I look forward to that for, a few reasons, just because Mercury and Pisces can be so not boundaryless, I think is the best way to put it. But in Aries, it gives us a chance to get to the point of something. And the only caveat is that it will go retrograde. But, as far as this being a big moment, I do think it's big with regards to the retrograde, but that's probably about it. I think any ingress into Aries of any planet right now is going to bring up the fact that Neptune and Saturn are about to ingress that sign as well. So, yeah, I mean, this to me doesn't feel overly bad, good. Either way, it's just kind of a moment that we will notice, I think. It just, especially with the fact that Mars is direct now, because Mars rules Aries. So Mars is about to start picking up speed after this. And I think the nature of the fact that Mercury goes retrograde in this sign speaks to, again, Mars had to be in the sign of its fall for so long. And now it's like, okay, we get to do a little cleanup in Mars's home sign. And that's just what this Mercury speaks to. So yeah, notice, especially if you have anything in Aries or our cardinal signs. But I don't think the major Mercury and Aries stuff will happen until it goes retrograde or gets close to its retrograde degree.
Yeah. And it's covering like not for as long because Venus is 40 days and nights and Mercury's only like a much shorter time, isn't it? That is
Yeah.
from the 14th of March to the 29th of March. So it's a shorter time, but obviously we've got the shadow as well that is kind of tracking over the same territory. So Venus in Mercury joins, but they're working together. But also I was thinking about like the Mercury retrogrades have just been in the fire signs, haven't they? There's been a thing. The last one was Sagittarius, and before that it was Leo.
Yeah, so we get a dip of Pisces, and it'll be in Pisces from like the 29th through the April 7th before it goes direct, yeah.
It's just interesting with it being in water, that it's like, okay, what do we need to find out then about this watery nature?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're very used to the retrograde in the fire sign. That's what we've become accustomed to over the last year or so. But this is new.
And that's what a way to kick off March. You know, the first few days, we got Mercury moving into Aries, the Mercury-Neptune conjunction before that. So
yeah,
here we go.
Yeah, it's all like our ideas and our thoughts and our communications and everything. And again, when it's not just us, it's everybody around us as well. So bear in mind that other people are affected, you know, even if you're not. If you've not got the cardinal placements that other people will have. So yeah, if you notice them experiencing that shift from the laid back, dreamy, mutable, okay, anything goes today, tomorrow, that's fine, to suddenly it's urgent. You know, I need it now. That's what that's all about. And also it's got that sextile to Jupiter that is ruling, which feels a bit easier than when bring opportunities through. But obviously in Pisces it was a square, which can be a bit more tense, but can also bring action through. So yeah, it would have been, that would be another reformation. I don't think it reaches the degree to make an exact sextile, but it's in a whole sign sextile with Jupiter. And it can't see that south node in Virgo either from there. So it'll reconnect with the north node and make an opposition. But where it is, it's not seeing where it rules. I always like to see when there's an ingress, can it see its home signs? And of course it can see Gemini, but it can't see Virgo. That might be, it might disconnect us a little bit from our ability to be organized and attend to the details. That might be a bit more challenging. You know, the sense of urgency that we get in Aries might overtake that ability. So do be aware of that and maybe try and remember to check those details. It's hard when the astrology is disconnecting you from it because that's for a reason. Maybe we need to, I don't know. But do you think you've had more years of like looking at this kind of stuff? I'm still like hypothesizing about, does it mean this?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that is.
Oh no, I was just actually thinking, I was like, in that, you know, kind of, it's funny because it rounds out, this is the last transit we have on this week, right?
Yeah.
And I was just thinking about how it's a Monday. And it's like, okay, well, as we start a Monday with Mercury moving into Aries, and then, you know, it really does. Like, I think all the way through this week of March, which is why I was thinking, is this the last transit we were going over? Because all the way up till now, it's like, it feels like 2024 vibes. And all of a sudden, March comes in and it's brand new. And that's what I was just kind of tuning into with Venus going retrograde in Aries, Mars being direct. Now, and we're almost with the sun past Saturn, which I know that the astrological new year is the sun ingressing Aries, but lately, since Saturn's been in these later signs, I've noticed that the new year doesn't really get started till everything passes Saturn, you know? So I'm really excited about all this, and it's a good way to wrap up our week.
Yeah, because Saturn's an outer boundary, isn't it?
Yep.
Holding that. I mean, we've still got that contra Antishas. I've got a Mercury-Neptune one forming now that Mercury is moving. So again, the Aries to Pisces, so that's forming 28. So when it gets to 1 and 2 degrees, it will be exact. That secretive opposition. But also the other Antishas we talked about the previous one, they're still there. So that's all still going on, bubbling on beneath the surface. So go to 2025 with all this underneath the surface stuff happening.
That's right. That's right. Well, this was it's wonderful though. I'm glad that we did this 5th week because we were trying to decide now who's going to do the March with you.
This is still to be decided. So
Okay.
thank you for joining us, Scott. We'll be back in March, looking from the 5th to the 12th of March, and it will be me.
Yeah, and we'll see who it's like a surprise.
Yeah, I mean, I'm waiting to hear if Janessa confirms, but if not, I will be a
Somebody will.
volunteer. Hopefully somebody will be available, and I will confirm it when I know who's available. So yeah, we'll see who's covering March. But thank you so much, Mandi, for joining me for February. This has been great. And going and doing the extra mile of traveling into March with me as well. That's been,
Yeah, I'm so glad we did.
yeah, you needed to talk about that Venus retrograde.
Yes.
That was very important. So yeah, if you've enjoyed this, please remember to like, subscribe, and do comment about your experiences, especially with the Venus retrograde. Help us to learn and understand how this is like playing out for you. But yeah, enjoy the astrology. And I've been Sonia from Celestia Astrology, and Mandi is Mandi Ray, and you can find her at ecstaticastrology.com. And you can find all the ladies of Stereosphere Kairos will be in the show notes, and you can find how to connect with any of us. We're all involved in this project, so do connect with any of us, and you can have a chance to sense we all do astrology slightly differently, have different ideas, have different thoughts. So you can get a sense of where we're all coming from by listening to these and seeing how we take you through the different months.
I love it so much. This is so great.
Yeah, it's a great way to work, isn't it? I love the collective nature and bouncing ideas off each other. Thank you so much for joining us, Mandi, and well done on your first Aries Severe Kairos Astro Weekly update. Thank you.
Thank you. You guys have a good one.